If you're an overachiever or you're somebody that's trying to strive for their best self, you're no stranger to the fact that there is so many different facets to life, and trying to be a 10 out of 10 in all of them is honestly overwhelming. You may even have come across a diagram like this, which simplifies life into 3 major categories. And if you were to think about each category in depth, you would probably come across a few tasks, habits, or activities that in general provide the most amount of value in those categories. Those types of tasks and habits play perfectly into the Pareto Principle, which is also known as the 80-20 rule. The Pareto Principle states that for many outcomes, 80% of the outputs can be directly associated to 20% of inputs. And this might come across as counterintuitive because as humans, we expect the world to be balanced. But as a matter of fact, the natural state of the world is not balanced, it's actually imbalance. Imbalances, such as the fact that roughly 80% of the wealth of the world is amassed by only 20% of the population, can be conceptualized as unfair. However, this perception arises from the assumption that work and reward have a one-to-one relationship. The Pareto Principle demonstrates this as a fallacy, as not all work provide the same value, therefore they are not equal. The creative use of this 80-20 rule can empower us to spend more time and give more attention to the 20% that provide us the most amount of output, while cutting down our time expenditure and our attention to that 80% that don't particularly provide that much upside. However, the Pareto Principle doesn't come without its limitations. It is true that maybe 80% of our inputs are not providing us with as much output as we'd like, but that doesn't mean that we would want to neglect those aspects into oblivion, because they might turn out to be important in the long run. Having had this fresh on my mind while listening to an episode of Ali Abdaal's podcast, I was introduced to the topic of optimizing versus satisficing. And if you're anything like me, I had not heard satisfice before, and I thought it was a made-up word, which to my surprise turns out that it is an actual English word, which means decide and pursue a course of action that will satisfy the minimum requirements necessary to achieve a particular goal. Meaning, do the bare minimum to get you to the level that you're still happy with it. Yes, it's not 100%, but it's meeting the threshold for you to be content with it. And just to brush up on optimize from Oxford Dictionary, it means make the best or most effective use of a situation or resource, meaning you excel to make it as good as it can become. So having these 2 categories in mind, I would like to suggest a framework moving forward with our lives, meaning there's a set group that we would optimize for, and the rest of the stuff that we still deem important enough that we don't want to fully discard, but we want to keep around, and we just satisfy those. So let's go through how I think we could decide between what gets optimized and what gets satisfied. 1. Define the aspects of life that you genuinely care about. Sit down with a blank piece of paper and jot down 10 to 20 aspects of life that you would want to excel, pursue, or improve in your life. Then, narrow it down to the top 3 to 5 that you think are the most important in your current state of life. 2. Plan. Break your life into periods. It might be based on age, like, 20 to 30, 30 to 40, or it could be based on the period of life you're in. Pre-marriage, post-marriage, pre-kids, post-kids, stuff like that. And then sit down and ask yourself this question. How do you want to allocate your resources, which are health, money, and time, to get you closer to the goal that you're trying to pursue? Choose these by trying to think about what aspects of life you think you should definitely not be neglecting. A way of thinking about this is how Jeff Bezos actually thinks about making decisions, and it is, would my 80-year-old self be happy with this decision or not? An example of this would be making a conscious effort into strength training and putting on lean mass while you're in your younger ages, let's say teenagers to like mid-30s, because you're absolutely juiced up on endogenous testosterone. So you'll be able to put on mass easier, and also your recovery will be a lot faster. After thinking about your dot points through these frameworks, optimize the top ones, and the rest satisfies. But you might be wondering how we could get started on the journey of optimizing or satisficing. And how I've decided to go about it is through first figuring out the limits. It might be useful to start by setting up reasonably unreasonable goalposts for your optimizing group. What does that mean? Meaning that is what you want to be aiming for if your best self was to go after that goal. And for your satisficing group, what you do is decide on a minimum satisfactory requirement that you set for yourself. Set something reasonable, and then the thing is, if it's too easy, you can always move it up. But if you set it too high and then bringing it down, if you're anything like me, you're gonna beat yourself up about it. So just start low and then slowly bring it up if you feel like that's needed. Step number 4 is to track. To start tracking, you first need to decide on a metric that is easy to measure for yourself. This could be time, this could be reps, this could be laps, whatever. You think about the goal that you've got and set a metric that you think you'd be able to easily track. Now, when you've got that metric, track meticulously. And not gonna lie to you, when you first start tracking, it's pretty hard because it's genuinely the first step towards self-discipline. Why? It's because you will start having data points. And when you have data points, it's really hard to do some random mental gymnastics around the goal of your choice and self-deceive yourself. And for the satisficing group, this is practically the end of the road. So what you do is you define the aspects, you plan for them, and then you set a limit, and then you track, and that's it. But for the optimizing group, there's an extra step that makes it fun, and that is 5, gamifying. When you start to track, as I discussed before, you start to gather data. And the cool thing about data is that it makes it easy for you to recognize trends. And the cool thing about our complex but surprisingly simple brain is progress activates our reward circuitries. So as long as the trend is moving us closer to the goal that we've set, we feel motivated, we feel driven, and we have more energy. So using this knowledge and the data that you have, you could start and compare yourself to your past self. It could be a day before, a week before, and then make it into a game that you're trying to beat your past self so that you can always excel and become better. And that way, we would feel more motivated. And that is pretty much it for me today. I know I've been changing up the topics on the videos recently, but if you've gone to this point and you have any opinions, please let me know. Hold nothing back. I am open to anything. Thank you very much. Catch you later. The 80-20 rule. This is pretty cool, to be honest. I can do whatever, my hands are free. Well, I might be autistic.